Hey guys, we're in John chapter 13 today, and we're going to read about Jesus washing his disciples' feet at the very last meal that he spends with them before he is nailed to the cross. So we're about 24 hours or less from Jesus's death, and he is having dinner with his disciples. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. So it was customary when people would go for dinner to somebody's home, their feet would be washed by the lowest servant in the home. They would have their feet washed because they often sat very low to the ground and their feet were dirty. And Jesus takes this place of the lowest servant, and he begins to wash the feet of his disciples. John actually tells us why Jesus does this. He says, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal and began washing their feet. So Jesus takes this position of extreme humility, not because he believes he's the least in the room, but because he knows that he's the greatest. And I think true humility sometimes comes from confidence in who you are, knowing who you are. Because if we are insecure about who we are, it's harder to lower ourselves even more because we already have this sense of insecurity of self-worth. But when we have the security of self-worth, we know who we are. We know that we are a child of God. We know where we come from and where we're going. We don't need the approval of other people, so it's so much easier for us to lower ourselves. So the most powerful man in the room, the most powerful man in the world, uses his power to bless others and to serve others. He's trying to teach his disciples here what a good leader does, and he's trying to teach us what a good leader does and what that looks like. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" So he's been washing his disciples' feet. Now he comes to Peter. Jesus replies, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." So Peter is trying to take this place of, he's trying to honor God by saying, "You're not going to wash my feet. I should be washing your feet." But Jesus is saying, "I have to wash you. This is a metaphor here what I'm doing, but if you don't let me wash you, you have no part in me." And that's also a message for all of us. If we don't humble ourselves and say we need Jesus, we need saving, and we don't allow him in faith to wash us and to cleanse us of our sins, we can't partake in him. We forfeit the kingdom of heaven if we won't humble ourselves and say we need cleansing, and Jesus is the only one who can do it. "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you is." So if we have had a bath, if we have cleansed in faith in Jesus, we've come to believe in him and will believe our whole lives, and we're cleansed. We've had the bath. Our whole body is clean, but we need only to wash our feet. Often we do have to come back and wash our feet and be cleansed by Jesus from unrighteousness, because it's really easy to sink back into sin and the things that hold us back and the things that are not of God. It's so easy for us to fall back into those traps. And even though maybe our whole body overall is clean because we have faith in Jesus, we do need to come back to Jesus to have him wash our feet. I think that's kind of the analogy that we're reading in. So Jesus says, "You are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" He asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." So I think a lot of these disciples would happily wash Jesus's feet because he is their Lord. They honor him and they look up to him so much. So I think they would wash his feet in an instant. But it's harder to get them to wash each other's feet because in their hearts, they're wondering who is greater amongst themselves. They know Jesus is greater than them, but it's kind of this competition that they have amongst themselves and that we all do as humans. We all are in a way like competing with each other. And Jesus is saying, there's no need to compete. The greatest of you is actually going to get on your knees and wash the other one's feet. Even you're going to wash the feet of those who are not your Lord. And that's what he is asking them. That's what he's calling them to. I am not referring to all of you. So now Jesus is about to predict his betrayal. He says, I am not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen. He knows every single one of his disciples. He knows their hearts front and back. He says, but this is to fulfill this passage of scripture. He who shared my bread has turned against me. So that's a verse in the Psalms that's about to be fulfilled. I am telling you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe that I am who I am. Very truly, I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me, and whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. After he said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, very truly, I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. His disciples stared at one another, at a loss to know which of them he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and asked, "Ask him which one he means." Leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." Then dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. As soon as Jesus took the bread, Satan entered into him. So to hand someone dipped bread was an honor. It was actually something that someone would do somewhat like a toast to show friendliness and welcoming and acceptance towards somebody. So Jesus, while pointing out who his betrayer is, hands this toast or hands this bread to Judas and does it in love and acceptance. He knows that Judas is going to betray him, and he still, while troubled in spirit, he's heartbroken that this is going to happen, but he still shows Judas nothing but love, and that's how he treats all of us. I think our rejection towards him breaks his heart, and he continues to shower us in love, hoping that we will turn around. So Jesus told him, handing the bread to him, "What you are about to do it quickly." But no one at the meal understood why Jesus said this to him. Since Judas had charge of the money, some thought Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the festival or to give something to the poor. As soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. So Jesus only told one disciple that was sitting next to him that whoever he handed the bread to was the one who was going to betray him. But the table of disciples, they don't know who it is that's going to betray him. And Judas hadn't made it obvious up to this point. Judas was just one of them. So it's kind of Jesus and Judas know that he's the betrayer, and then the guy sitting next to Jesus knows. But besides that, his disciples aren't sure, and his disciples just think that Jesus is sending him to do something with the money because Judas was the treasurer. When he was gone, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself and will glorify him at once." It's interesting that Jesus uses so much terminology about glory in the moments where he knows he's going to be betrayed and arrested and sent to the cross for a painful death. And even though it's going to look humiliating and absolutely horrible and shameful, Jesus knows that overall it is for the glory of God. So he just speaks of it in the terms of glory. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. He uses my children not in a condescending way, but in an endearing way to these men who have completely come to rely on him, and they're dependent, and he loves them as his own. He says, you will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus replied, where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. Peter asked, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Then Jesus answered, will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. So I think we read in the next chapter, or the chapters to come, Peter will deny Jesus 3 times. But I think in this moment, he's saying, Lord, I'll lay down my life for you. I think he means it, because Peter does have so much faith and love for Jesus, but sometimes our intentions are good and we want to do the right thing and we can't imagine doing the wrong thing. But in the moment, in the emotion of a moment where someone confronts us and says, do you believe in Jesus? And we know we're going to be excommunicated or mocked or shamed, especially like back in these times, it's easier to impulsively act on that emotion that's saying, I'm going to be rejected by other people if I say yes. And that's what's to come. I think that in this moment, though, he really does mean it when he says, Lord, I would lay down my life for you. He loves Jesus so much. And Peter is not the one who's going to betray Jesus, but he will disown him. And Jesus, as we read, which is one of my favorite parts of the gospel, is even after Peter disowns publicly Jesus 3 times, Jesus still accepts him and still loves him and redeems him. And it's hard to imagine that that's even possible, but he does. And it's incredible. I will see you guys tomorrow for chapter 14, and I hope you have a really good day.